You actually quit your job? That's what my brother said, laughing, after I gave up a steady career because he said, "Trust me, we're family." Hi, I'm Natalie. I believed in him. I believed in us. But what I thought was a life-changing opportunity turned out to be his punchline. I lost my job, I lost my place, but worst of all, I realized I was never taken seriously by the people who claimed to love me. Have you ever trusted family and paid the price? Drop a comment. I want to hear your story too. Growing up, my brother Brandon used to say, "Family sticks together." I held on to those words like they were stitched into the lining of my soul. Maybe that's why, when he offered me a place in his new company, I didn't ask many questions. I didn't think I needed to. It was a warm October Saturday in Charlotte, the kind where the breeze smelled like cinnamon and the sidewalks were littered with gold and rust-colored leaves. I was heading to Brandon's backyard BBQ, a yearly thing he hosted since buying that house in Dilworth, with the wraparound porch and the obnoxiously perfect lawn. I brought my usual, Chloe's homemade coleslaw in a chilled container and a 6-pack of ginger ale. Brandon liked to joke I was old school because I never showed up empty-handed, even if he rarely noticed what I brought. As I set the container on the buffet table, the smoke from the grill curled upward like a lazy ribbon. Brandon stood by the fire pit in his Carolina Panthers apron, beer in hand, flipping ribs like he owned the whole city. "Nat!" he called out, flashing that signature grin of his, the kind that made people believe in him before he'd said a word. We hugged briefly, then he handed me a plate already loaded with ribs and corn on the cob. I found a spot on the lawn chair, balancing the plate on my lap, when he sat beside me and dropped the bomb like it was nothing. "So, I've been thinking," he said, brushing ash off his sleeve. "I want you to be part of my startup." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He grinned wider. "Logistics tech, scalable, real impact. I've already got 2 angel investors interested. I'm building something huge, Nat, and I want you on board." I let out a short laugh. "What would I even do?" "Operations," he said, like it was already decided. "You're organized, smart, and I trust you more than anyone. I need someone I can count on." Those words, that trust, I soaked them up like dry soil welcoming rain. I glanced down at my plate, ribs untouched. "That's big. I mean, I have a job." He leaned in slightly. "You're working in HR at a firm that doesn't even have matching chairs in the lobby. No offense." I rolled my eyes. "None taken." He nudged me playfully. "Come on, quit your job. Take the leap. We'll build this together." That night, back in my apartment, I called Chloe. She listened quietly while I paced the living room, phone in hand, heart thudding. "He sounded so serious," I said, chewing my lip. "I mean, he said he trusts me more than anyone." Chloe hummed on the other end. "Natalie, are you sure this isn't just one of his grand ideas? You know how he is." I paused at the window, watching the street lamp flicker. He seemed different this time. "Well, if you're going to do it," she said gently, "make sure it's what you want, too." The next morning, Sunday brunch at our parents' place sealed it. Mom made her famous baked French toast, and Dad poured orange juice into champagne flutes like it was a wedding. Brandon told them about the business over scrambled eggs. "I've asked Natalie to come on board," he announced, resting a hand on my shoulder like we were a power duo. Mom beamed. "It's about time you two work together." Dad nodded. This could be the beginning of something great. I smiled awkwardly. Fork paused mid-air. That moment, their praise, the kind I rarely received, it felt like sunlight through a crack in the clouds. Monday, I walked into my office, a brick building tucked between a juice bar and a notary service. My desk had a wobble I kept meaning to fix. I sat there for a full hour, staring at my screensaver, a photo of my niece blowing bubbles in the park. By noon, I walked into my manager's office and gave notice. "You're sure?" she asked, brows raised. I nodded. "It's a family thing, a new chapter." 2 weeks later, on my last day, I packed up my things. A sticky note from Chloe stayed on my monitor. You're brave. Don't forget it. I lingered longest at the framed Employee of the Month certificate, the one from May that still made me smile. I ran my fingers over the glass and gently wrapped it in a sweater before slipping it into my bag. As I left the office building, the wind caught the edge of my coat. I took one last look at the sidewalk I'd walked for 3 years straight. Coffee in hand, I whispered, "This is it." I didn't know what was waiting for me, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. A week passed, then another. No emails from Brandon, no contract, no phone call, just silence. I should have known something was wrong when Brandon kept dodging my texts. First it was a swamped with meetings excuse. Then, let's talk after the weekend. But when the weekend came and went, I cornered him in the kitchen while he stirred gravy in our parents' home 2 days before Thanksgiving. "So, when do I start?" I asked, trying to sound casual even though my voice betrayed the nerves knotting in my chest. He blinked, then chuckled. "Wait, you actually quit?" My smile froze. He leaned back against the counter, holding the wooden spoon like a microphone. "Sis, I was just spitballing. Throwing ideas around. I didn't think you'd take it that seriously." My stomach dropped so fast I could almost hear it hit the tile. "You said you trusted me more than anyone," I said, quieter than I intended. Brandon grinned like he was still in on some private joke. "Yeah, and I trust Chloe with my fantasy football picks. Doesn't mean I'd give her my bank account." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline to end, for him to say, "Just kidding, Nat," and pull a crisp offer letter from his back pocket. But all I got was the scent of sage and onion and the distant sound of my mother humming in the living room. "You knew I was serious," I said, more to myself than him. "You looked me in the eye." He shrugged. I was excited. It was an idea, not a promise. Relax. Relax. The words splintered inside me. I wanted to scream, but instead I walked out of the kitchen and into the dining room where the table was already half set. Turkey-themed napkins sat neatly folded beside the good china, the one Mom only brought out twice a year. I gripped the back of a chair and tried to breathe. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Mom asked, walking in with a garland of fake leaves. "Ask Brandon," I muttered. Brandon followed, still grinning. "Mom, Nat thinks I offered her a job." Mom chuckled as she untangled the garland. "Oh, honey, you do get carried away sometimes." "I left my job," I snapped. "I quit, because of him." She blinked but didn't drop the garland. "Well, I'm sure you'll bounce back. You always do." It felt like watching someone wave off a house fire as if it were a candle flickering too brightly. Later that night, I stayed up making baked mac and cheese. It was the one thing I always contributed to Thanksgiving dinner. Cheesy, a little crispy on top with a hint of cayenne. I stood in the kitchen, stirring slowly, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. Mom walked in, pulled a spoon from the drawer, dipped it into the pot, and gave it a taste. "Not bad," she said, turning away. "Still not like Grandma's, though." Her words landed like a slap dressed in lace. I said nothing, just kept stirring. I'd learned by now that defending myself only made things worse. The next morning, Chloe texted, "Chloe, holiday market today. Mulled cider plus bad Christmas carolers. You need a break." I stared at the screen for a long minute, thumbs hovering. The thought of walking through fake snow and watching strangers laugh felt impossible. Me, rain check. Not in the mood. I placed my phone face down and opened my laptop. Job boards blinked back at me. Dozens of listings with words like dynamic, fast-paced, must wear multiple hats. The more I scrolled, the less I believed I had anything to offer. My resume suddenly looked like a confession. 3 years at a small HR firm, bachelor's in communications, 2 Employee of the Month awards. It all felt invisible. I clicked on a posting for a customer service associate at a mattress company and stared blankly at the requirements. Positive energy. Must lift 50 pounds. I closed the tab. The house smelled like baked turkey and cloves, but my mind was wrapped in something colder. It was Thanksgiving Day, but the atmosphere felt clinical. The kind of holiday where people smile for photos and silently compete over whose side dish gets eaten first. At the table, I watched as my father carved the turkey with the precision of a surgeon. Brandon passed around cranberry sauce like he hadn't just detonated my life. I smiled for the family photo, but my eyes didn't join in. During dessert, I stepped into the hallway to catch my breath. That's when I overheard Dad speaking to my cousin Daniel near the coat rack. "Natalie's just a little lost right now," he said. The words clipped, but not cruel. "She'll figure it out, eventually." It wasn't the first time I'd been minimized, but it was the first time I didn't flinch. I just stood there, holding a burnt sliver of pumpkin pie and thinking, maybe I am lost, but I didn't get here alone. That night, I sat on my childhood bed, the one with faded stickers on the headboard, and opened my inbox. My cursor hovered over a new message. To Maria. Daniels at hrpartners.com. Subject, potential rehire. I stared at the blank body of the email, fingers trembling. My pride screamed not to do it. My heart begged for something to anchor me again. But after a moment, I sighed and hit delete. I couldn't go back, but I had no idea how to go forward either. Outside, the holiday lights on our front porch blinked unevenly. Half the string had gone out. Somehow it felt fitting. It was a Friday evening in early February when Brandon texted, "Come to startup pitch night. You don't have to say anything, just show up for support." I almost said no. After everything, I still felt like a shadow of myself. But something inside me stirred, a need to see for myself who he was when I wasn't looking. The event was held in a downtown hall with glass walls and concrete floors, sleek and echoey like it had nothing to hide, though everything about the night suggested otherwise. Strangers smiled too wide. Laughter was sharp-edged. Everyone sipped on mint lemonade from mason jars and nibbled churros served from a vintage food truck parked just outside. I showed up in a black cardigan and flats. Practical. Forgettable. I wanted to disappear into the back row, observe, then slip out before anyone noticed. Chloe came with me, as she always did. "For moral support," she said, and squeezed my hand as we walked in. The room was buzzing, all fast-talking, fast-walking energy. Words like scaling, synergy, and disruption floated like expensive perfume. Brandon was already on stage when we found seats. He wore a navy blazer, no tie, just the right level of casual to seem trustworthy. He stood beneath a spotlight, gesturing toward a massive screen behind him. "And this," he said, voice smooth as satin, "is our founding team, visionaries who believed from day one." Then it happened. My photo appeared, centered, smiling. Professional headshot. A title floated beneath it. Co-founder Natalie Cooper. I froze. The room clapped. Someone whistled. But all I could hear was the low rush of blood pounding in my ears. Chloe leaned in. "Did you know about this?" I shook my head slowly. Number I didn't. A voice to my right chimed in. Friendly. Unfamiliar. "You look like you didn't sign off on that." I turned to find a man about my age, curly dark hair, wearing a navy sweater and holding a business card between his fingers like a playing card. "Marcus," he said, "you look like you want to vanish." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "You have no idea." He offered a small, empathetic smile. "You want to get some air?" I nodded. We stepped outside to where the churro truck was wrapping up for the night. The air was cold, a bite behind each breeze. The lemon mint aftertaste from earlier clung to my tongue. "He didn't ask permission," I said finally. "He used my name, my face. For what?" Marcus tilted his head. "For clout. It happens more than you think." Inside, the pitch wrapped up. People filtered out, handing out business cards like they were currency. Brandon saw me standing near the truck and jogged over, grin still in place. "You came," he said, opening his arms like I'd just agreed to be his maid of honor. I took a step back. "Why is my photo on your presentation?" He blinked. "Branding." "Branding?" I repeated. "I'm not part of your company, Brandon." "You were. You are. You're still family." "Don't twist this," I snapped. "You never even followed up after I quit my job. But I'm good enough for your slideshow? He raised his palms. Nat, don't make this a thing. People expect to see a founding team, investors like the optics. You mean you like the optics? Brandon sighed. You're overreacting. Again. I turned to leave, but Chloe intercepted me near the entrance. You need to say something, she said gently. This is your story too. Start telling it. That night, I sat in my apartment, the event flyer still crumpled in my coat pocket. I opened my laptop, stared at the blinking cursor on a blank social media post. My fingers hovered, then danced. I am not affiliated with Brandon Cooper's business in any formal or informal capacity. My name and image were used without my permission. I ask that they be removed from all promotional materials immediately. I read it over 4 times, then hit post. The next morning, it had over 100 likes, 24 comments, a few DMs from people I didn't know, some applauding, others asking if I needed support. One message stood out. Derek L., law student here. You may have grounds. Happy to chat. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't ready to think in terms of lawsuits and affidavits. I just wanted air. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Brandon. Brandon, call me. This is serious. Serious? Only now? I placed the phone face down, letting it vibrate against the kitchen table until it went quiet. Inside, a forgotten churro from the event sat in a paper bag, now cold and limp. I picked it up, broke it in half, and set it down. Even sweet things can turn bitter when they're left too long in the wrong hands. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Maybe it was just the weight of everything it represented. I stood in the lobby of Brandon's new office, floor-to-ceiling glass, industrial lighting, artfully messy whiteboards full of buzzwords like scale and network optimization. The receptionist smiled like she'd been trained to in a seminar titled, How to Smile While Redirecting Lawsuits. Can I help you? I'm here for Brandon Cooper, I said, smoothing the edge of my coat. I'm his sister. She nodded, picked up the phone, murmured something, then pointed down the hall. He's in conference room A. I walked slowly, one hand gripping the envelope, the other clenched in my coat pocket. The hallway smelled like new carpet and printer ink, fresh, ambitious, forgettable. He looked surprised to see me, but only for a second. Sis, Brandon said, standing up and spreading his arms like we were at Thanksgiving again. What's going on? I placed the envelope on the table between us. He looked down, then up again. What's this? Cease and desist, I said calmly. I'm asking you formally to remove my name and photo from everything related to your business. He laughed, a little too loud. You're really doing this? I already did this, I said. Now it's your move. He opened the envelope, flipped through the pages. His smile thinned into something colder. You could have just called me. I tried that, I replied. You didn't listen. He leaned back in his chair. This is extreme, Natalie. You're blowing things out of proportion. I met his gaze evenly. Number, I'm setting a boundary. He scoffed. You think this makes you look strong? You look petty. I stood up. You think using someone without consent is just branding. I call it exploitation. He didn't follow me out. That night, Mom called. Honey, is all this really necessary? Her voice was soft, sugar-coated concern. I could practically hear her stirring chamomile tea while flipping through her church bulletin. Yes, I said. You and Brandon have always had your little spats, but this is serious. It is serious, I said. He used my name, my face, without asking. She sighed. Sometimes we have to forgive family, Natalie. That's what grown-ups do. And sometimes grown-ups hold each other accountable. There was a pause, then Dad's voice came on, more brusque. You always overcomplicate things. You're too sensitive. I'm not asking you to take sides, I said, holding the phone tighter. I'm asking you to stop dismissing me. Silence. Then the click of a call ending. I sat there for a long time, staring at the call log, wondering how many more times I'd have to bleed for people to believe I was hurt. The next morning, I walked into the coffee shop where I'd started picking up part-time shifts. It wasn't glamorous, wiping tables, brewing espresso, smiling until my cheeks ached, but it paid the bills and gave me space to think. The smell of lemon-scented floor cleaner clung to the air. I tied my apron, clipped my name tag, and started steaming milk for a hazelnut latte. The routine helped. Hot cup, paper sleeve, careful drizzle of caramel. Something about it was honest. Around noon, Chloe showed up with a small box wrapped in parchment paper. "Cookies," she said, sliding them across the counter. "Better than fake apologies." I laughed, a real one this time. "Thank you." We sat for a few minutes during my break, legs stretched out near the window, the winter light casting long, slanted shadows on the floor. "You okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said. "It's strange. The more I stand up for myself, the more they act like I'm causing chaos." Chloe nodded. "The first time you say no, they'll act like you set the house on fire." That night, Marcus texted to check in. Marcus. Still standing? Me. Leaning. But yes. We met later that week for coffee, this time as friends, not strangers united by a poorly timed PowerPoint slide. He told me about his mom, how she'd spent 10 years working in the family store before walking away when they refused to put her name on the lease. She said leaving was the hardest thing she ever did, Marcus said. But she said it was the first time she felt like her own person. I sipped my coffee and stared out the window. I've always been the easy one, the helper, the keep the peace one. Not anymore, he said. That night, I opened my social media again and typed, "Silence protects no one. Not anymore." I hit post and turned off my phone. Then I blocked Brandon's number. For the first time in weeks, I slept without anxiety buzzing under my skin. The quiet didn't feel ominous. It felt earned. But peace, like coffee, rarely lasts long in a family that thrives on control. The next morning, I was restocking oat milk behind the bar when I heard the bell above the coffee shop door. I looked up and saw her, Mom, coat buttoned to the neck, lips pressed in a tight line, eyes scanning the cafe like it was a courtroom. She walked straight to the counter. "We need to talk," she said, voice sharp but barely above a whisper. "Now." It started with a suitcase. A small one, navy blue, scuffed at the corners. I hadn't used it in over a year. As I zipped it open and began folding sweaters into neat, hesitant stacks, I realized something. This trip wasn't about Asheville. It was about leaving behind the part of me that still begged to be seen. Outside my apartment window, the cherry blossom tree on the sidewalk had exploded into full bloom overnight. Pink petals clung to the breeze, scattering like confetti across the pavement. Spring was arriving with full force, but inside me, it still felt like February. I met Mom that morning at a little cafe downtown, the kind with oversized mugs and indie folk music playing a little too softly. She had texted the day before, "Let's talk, just us." She wore her usual soft pink sweater, pearls, and that same pursed lip expression that meant she'd already made up her mind. I offered a weak smile as I sat down. The barista brought me a cinnamon oat milk latte. It smelled like warmth. I wasn't sure I deserved it. Mom didn't waste time. "You made Brandon look bad," she said, folding her napkin in half. "That's not what family does." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, as evenly as I could, "Family doesn't use each other either." Her eyes flickered. "You know how he is. He gets excited. He didn't mean to hurt you." "He did hurt me," I said. "And so did you. Every time you asked me to be quiet for the sake of peace, you chose convenience over truth." Her fingers tightened around her mug. "Why are you trying to rewrite everything?" "I'm not rewriting," I said softly. "I'm remembering it more clearly now." She sighed, her voice dropping. "You've always been sensitive." "And you've always used that word like a weapon," I replied. The conversation didn't last much longer. We hugged out of habit, not warmth. I left first. The door jingled behind me, and with it, something unspoken snapped in half. That night, I pulled out a cardboard box from my closet. It was full of old journals and keepsakes, birthday cards from second grade, ticket stubs from family road trips, scribbled quotes in gel pen from when I thought I'd become a motivational speaker. I flipped through one of the notebooks. Family is everything. Be the bigger person. Love means keeping quiet sometimes. Page after page, I saw the scripts I'd memorized but never questioned, until now. I walked to the kitchen, lit a single match, and held it to the edge of a torn-out page. The flame curled the paper, turning my childhood beliefs into drifting ash. I didn't cry. The next morning, Chloe came by with bagels and a travel mug full of chai. "Road snacks," she said, grinning. "And this." She handed me a small, folded card. I opened it once she left. "To the version of you the world tried to shrink, you outgrew her beautifully." I pressed the card to my chest for a moment, then tucked it into the front pocket of my suitcase. The bus to Asheville pulled out of the Charlotte station just after noon. I sat by the window, Marcus beside me, his arm warm against mine. The sky was clear, the road stretched out like a quiet invitation. We passed blooming dogwoods, rust-colored barns, and tiny gas stations with signs that hadn't been updated since 1994. I sipped cinnamon tea from a thermos. It tasted like something familiar, finally made right. We didn't talk much at first, but the silence was kind. Finally, he turned to me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, getting there. I opened my phone and typed a message. 2. Mom, Dad, Brandon. "I need space. Please respect that. I'm not angry. I just can't keep pretending nothing happened." Then I muted the group chat. The silence afterward was deafening and liberating. I leaned back against the seat, exhaling slowly, feeling the space I'd carved out finally begin to breathe with me. "Do you regret any of it?" Marcus asked. I thought for a moment. Only the part where I thought it was my job to make everyone comfortable. He smiled, eyes still on the road ahead. As the bus curved around a bend, a valley opened below us, dotted with trees bursting into green. Somewhere in the distance, a small house sat nestled between two hills, smoke rising gently from its chimney. "This place," Marcus said, nodding toward the view. "Feels right." I followed his gaze. "I actually got a job offer here," he added. "Small firm, nothing fancy, but steady. I was going to wait to tell you, but what if we stayed?" I looked out the window again. The hills rolled softly, unapologetically themselves. The trees didn't ask for permission to bloom, and for the first time in a long while, neither did I. Sometimes the life you thought you wanted has to fall apart, so the one you deserve can begin. It's something I once whispered into a pillow during a sleepless night, not knowing it would become the quiet anthem of my life. Now, 2 years later, I wake up to the smell of cinnamon bread drifting through the floorboards. The cafe downstairs starts baking early. By 6 a.m., the scent wraps around the building like a wool blanket. I live in a modest one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore in Asheville, tucked between a florist and a bike repair shop. It's the kind of place where wind chimes outnumber street signs, and no one's in a rush to be anyone but themselves. The window beside my bed is cracked open. Outside, red and orange leaves tumble across the cobblestone alleyway. Autumn here doesn't shout. It simply settles in and stays a while. I stretch, pad across the hardwood floors in wool socks, and start the kettle for tea. Marcus is already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, reading a news article on his tablet. He looks up and smiles. "It's sweater weather," he says. "I've been waiting all year," I reply. After breakfast, I walk to the community center 3 blocks away. The air smells like roasting coffee and wood smoke. I pass a mural of wildflowers someone painted on a brick wall last spring, now slightly faded but still joyful. At the center, I work with women re-entering the workforce. Some fresh out of tough relationships, others returning after raising kids or caring for sick relatives. I help with resumes, mock interviews, wardrobe tips. But more than anything, I listen. Today, a woman named Carla tells me she finally heard back from a local bakery. I didn't think they'd call, she says, voice soft but proud. They did, I reply, because you're ready. At lunch, I sit outside with my co-workers, Gloria from accounting, who grows tomatoes in her apartment, and Jamal, who's teaching himself Japanese for no reason other than he wants to. We laugh about nothing in particular. There's no pretense, no pretending, just warmth. Later, I meet Marcus near his office. He recently opened a small consulting firm that helps nonprofits with strategy and growth. It's not glamorous, but it makes a difference. And that's all he's ever wanted. I booked us a cabin for next weekend, he says, handing me a flyer. By the lake, no Wi-Fi. My eyes widen. We're really going full unplugged? He grins. It's only fair. Nature's been waiting. That evening, I return home, my hands cold but heart full. I light a candle on my windowsill, cedar wood and amber. Its flame flickers gently like it knows what it means to start over. On the bookshelf, nestled between novels and cookbooks, there's a small stack of letters from my mother. She writes every few months now, apologies couched in scripture, memories she's polished into something softer than I remember. I read them. I don't respond. But I read them without anger. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet choice not to bleed when someone presses where it used to hurt. I see Brandon's name one afternoon, scrolling headlines. His company is mentioned in a minor scandal, something about misreporting numbers to investors. My thumb hovers for a second, then I scroll past. I feel nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just space. At home, I sit by the window with my journal and begin to write. I am not who they tried to define. I am what I chose to reclaim. I pause, then write again. Peace is not the absence of noise. It's the refusal to let noise shape you. On the wall above my writing desk hangs a family photo, taken in 2003, back when I still thought love meant silence. I look at it for a long time. Then I take it down. In its place, I hang a print I bought from a local artist. It reads, "Build your peace like they built their opinions, loudly." And I do. Each day, brick by brick, tea by tea, smile by honest smile. I call Chloe on video that night. She's wrapped in a fuzzy blanket, mug in hand. "You look soft," I tease. "Soft is the new strong," she says. "And you look happy." I think I am. We talk until the screen dims and the signal lags, but the warmth lingers long after we hang up. I curl into bed, the candle still burning low. Outside, the bookstore below is closing up, the last customer stepping out with a canvas tote full of stories. I pull the blanket tighter, not because I'm cold, but because the comfort is earned. This isn't a perfect life, but it's mine, and that's enough. I used to think peace would come when everyone apologized, but sometimes it arrives when you stop needing them to. That little apartment above the bookstore? It didn't fix everything, but it gave me room to grow. In life, not every scar comes from a stranger. Some are left by the people closest to us. But healing doesn't require revenge. It only asks that we choose ourselves, even when others don't. If this story reminded you of a moment when you had to let go to find peace, I'd love to hear it. Your voice matters, and maybe, just maybe, it helps someone else begin again too.